Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday, July 10th, 2019 episode. Let me say that again. 2019 episode of Free Webinar Wednesdays. I've done these 2 weeks in a row, and you'd think I'd be back in the swing of things again. This is a very tongue-tied Eric Cook welcoming you to today's show. I'm with WSI Digital Marketing, where we work with businesses and organizations on helping them better understand and leverage the power of the internet as a strategic business tool. Learn more about us and all the fun things we get to do for our clients over at www.poweredbywsi.com. I'm excited, like I said in my rather stumbled but live, gotta love live webinars intro, second week in a row. And shocker, might even look like I'll have 3 weeks in a row next week. Although that doesn't mean that I'm joining you from my home office. I am actually in Wichita, Kansas today. I am going to be doing a keynote presentation for the Community Bankers Association of Kansas. The presentation is going to be about the Amazon effect and Amazon's I don't want to say impact on community banking, but what Amazon does really, really well. A little while ago, Amazon made the announcement that they were going to start getting into checking accounts and partnering with companies like Chase and others. So as most community bankers kind of pay attention to that, and when Amazon decides to dip their toe into something, it certainly is worth paying attention to. So I've got a presentation. I'll share with you kind of the high bullet points here in just a second of what I'm going to be talking about. But chances are, if you are attending the CBAK's annual convention, you're probably not going to be listening to today's show. But if by some chance you catch the show and you're going to be at the conference, I'm speaking in the morning, come up and say hi. Would love to meet you in person and chat a little bit. As a reminder, today's show and all shows are recorded, and I know I'm a little lax in getting them all up on our website, but that is in process behind the scenes. But certainly appreciate those of you that are joining live, and if you have comments or questions or thoughts, please feel free to use that chat function and let me know. Would love to hear from you. So back to the presentation, the Amazon effect as it relates to community banking. So in my presentation, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because that would be kind of a spoiler alert for the convention organizer that, hired me to come out here and deliver my presentation to them. But there's 5 areas that my presentation focuses around. And whether you are part of a financial institution, you're a traditional retailer, a business manager, whatever the case is, I think Amazon positions itself as a potential disruptor in a lot of areas. And the 5 things that I think Amazon does really well that I would challenge you during today's webinar, or maybe after the webinar, chat with some of your coworkers or colleagues, is how are you addressing these 5 things within your organization? The first is innovation and really not being afraid to think outside of the box. I know in the community banking world, the word innovation tends to be a little scary, and there's a lot of institutional memory, and that's the way we've always done it. But we can't rest on our laurels and expect that the world is going to remain the same. We have to think of ways to be innovative and stay up with the times and match the expectations of our customers. The second one is Amazon's created, in my opinion, a really, really good ecosystem where you buy stuff, you subscribe to their membership, you get video and audio content, you can read books and listen to tapes. Even that sounds like a dated statement, but you can tell I'm like in my late 40s when I say listen to tapes. But you can listen to audiobooks, which you don't listen to on tapes. Those are coming through you on a digital stream through the cloud. But they've built an ecosystem that even goes outside of buying stuff. They've got a shipping and a delivery service. They're getting into healthcare. So they're looking at different ways of just taking the needs of their customers and understanding what they are and figuring out how they can wrap their hands around more of those relationships. The third item that I draw attention to is the customer experience. And we talk in that I've got a cool video of their self-service grocery store, which is almost kind of like the Uberification, if that word hasn't been used enough. But the Uberification of groceries, where you basically create a frictionless experience. You walk into the grocery store, you scan your app, you pick up whatever you want from the grocery store and put it in your basket, and sensors and technology and monitors determine what you do and don't want. And then when you walk out, it basically automatically charges your app, just like getting an Uber or a Lyft. You hail it to the airport, which I did just a little bit ago. You get in the vehicle, it takes you to your destination, and you get out, and that's it. So thinking about the experience that your customers have with you, and is that one that is a frictionless, pleasant experience, or are you still doing things that create disruption and they take time and they're an inconvenience? And resist the, well, we have to do this because of compliance or rules or regulation or policy. Revisit all of those things and challenge the status quo to determine, is that really the ideal customer experience that you should be delivering? And look at other businesses in your industry that are delivering experiences, and are they doing it better than you? And look at businesses outside of your industry that might be setting an expectation like an Uber or a Lyft, that are creating a, wow, that was really easy. I wonder why my bank can't do that. I wonder why my vet can't do that. I wonder why my hardware store can't do that, whatever the case is. Excuse me. The fourth item is Amazon's utilization of data, and how they take everything that they know about you and boil that down to maximize sales opportunities and service opportunities. So when you buy one thing, they know what other people have bought in addition to that. They know what your preferences are. You know, I think at the end of the day, when you look at Amazon, I think you can define them as a lot of different types of companies, but I think probably one of the safest bets, if you had to describe them as a X company, it would be, at this point, I feel, a data company, because they've got so much information about you, your purchase activity, what you've been watching on Amazon Video, and what products correlate to certain movies and shows, so that they can work that into your feed when you log in. So, you know, how can we take all of this data and use it as a tool to better serve our customers? And then lastly, building partnerships and the different ways that Amazon is partnering up with small businesses. So even though you may feel threatened by it, I know a vast majority of the products and services that they offer are actually offered through small businesses. So maybe you have a small business and you're still selling stuff locally, but if you wanted to expand your capabilities and sell that nationwide or around the world, you can partner with Amazon. And they've done that with a number of other organizations. A lot of people don't realize they've partnered with Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway on the whole healthcare issue and healthcare insurance, and trying to figure out a way to make that better. So while they do a lot of stuff themselves, they're certainly not afraid to go into partnerships. And so looking at your organization, are there other businesses that complement what you offer or would be of interest to your customers and clientele? And can you build partnerships that create, I'll go buzzword on you here, a win-win synergy? But to make sure that when somebody does business with you, that there's other ways that you can enhance that customer's experience, even if it's not something that you particularly offer yourself through partnership opportunities. And of course, community banks work with all sorts of different clients and customers within the communities they serve. So there's a number of partnership opportunities there. So those are the 5 things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to do it over an hour instead of, 6 or 7 minutes like I just did there with some examples and videos. But it's one of my favorite presentations, and I think it gets people thinking outside of the box a little bit. And this is an annual conference. So there's going to be a lot of C-level, presidents, CEOs, maybe some board members that are responsible for managing and providing direction for their institution. So I'm hoping I can nudge a few people to get them thinking a little bit outside of the box, and should be a pretty cool conversation. So you can see I've got the Twitters up, and what I thought I'd do today is I was kind of thinking about different things that I'd like to chat about, and I've seen it a number of times. I've gone back and forth, but I don't know if I've really talked about it here on Free Webinar Wednesday, so I thought I'd make mention of it. I don't know how much. I recognize a few people in the live stream that are attending, and I know that there's some Twitter users out there because I actually interact with you on Twitter, and I think you know who I'm talking about. But if you are a Twitter user, I'm curious if you've noticed over on the right-hand side the sneak a peek at the new Twitter. Some of the things that they're offering in the new Twitter. So they talk about bookmarks and dark mode and data saver and other sorts of things. So what I've done here is I just want to draw attention to the differences. So I've left conventional Twitter up, and I copied the tab, and in the tab next to it, I went ahead and I opened up Twitter in the new version. And so first off, I realized in a lot of the articles that I've read about this, most of the interaction, I think, for Twitter probably comes primarily from a mobile device anyway. So when they rolled out the desktop redesign, there were some people that were like, yeah, big deal, I still use the Twitter app on my phone. And so they don't really get into Twitter. They don't really use it directly on desktop. But for those of you that sit at a desk, work at a computer, maybe it's easier to compose, the desktop redesign kind of embraces a little bit more of a mobile version. You can, the dark mode, it seems like everybody these days is bringing in a dark mode so that you can turn your screen black and make it look all goth and cool looking. But I think that maybe there's an ease on eye strain, and so there's probably some legitimacy there. I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't turn on dark mode when I had the opportunity to do so. So just your conventional screen, you've got your feed rolling down. A couple of things that I want to make sure I also talk about is I want to revisit the whole power of lists. I've talked about that before, but I still think creating lists is a powerful way to just kind of data mine and sort the information that your Twitter fire hose is delivering. Talk a little bit about hashtags. You can see over here on the left-hand side, some of the hashtags that are showing up, different things, so you can see trends for you. Talk about the curated feed and how you can turn that on or off. That was a change that happened. And then lastly, you may or may not know about a platform that Twitter purchased a while ago called TweetDeck, but it's a very Hootsuite-like layout that allows you to create different columns, and you can actually pull your Twitter directly into TweetDeck and you can use it. And that may even be, if you're going to be on a desktop and you want to be more of a power user, that might be a tool that you would use. So instead of just using Twitter natively, maybe TweetDeck would give you a little bit more power and control, because you can create columns for your different lists and mentions and messages and other sorts of things. So let's kind of flip over, and I'm going to go back and forth a couple of times. So here's current old version, and if I flip over, here's new fresh version. So go back to old version, go to fresh version. So noticeably bigger menu items over here. You've got home, explore, notifications. All this stuff is kind of shown over here on the left-hand side, whereas on this, you've got it kind of across the top and down the left. You've got, and if I roll and kind of create let's do a test. I think it's going to stay old version, but we'll cross our fingers. If not, take a mental picture of this, because once I load this, it may see that I've already gone over to the new version. So if I go to Eric Cook, yep. So it's going to switch me back. Yeah, I've already done it. Anyway, so now that we've switched, let's just go ahead and go for it. So you've got your links down here on the left-hand side, your bookmarks, your messages for your one-on-one conversations, lists. We'll talk about those here in just a little bit. You've got your profile so you can see what it is. So if you go and just put your handle there, this is all the stuff that you personally have been responsible for tweeting and sharing information. Or you can just click on the home, and this brings you into your feed with everything else that is coming in from people that you follow. You can see, there's a lot of information here. And if I go back to my profile, you can see that I'm following 2,900 accounts. So when I go to my home and I look at 2,900 accounts, all posting and sharing information, this can be really unruly and difficult to follow. So one of the things that I strongly recommend, and we teach this in class, I do a banking school every year out in Seattle, and part of that school, one of my favorite parts about that school is doing a hashtag battle where we select different hashtags for different classes, and we try to generate more activity and come up with ideas. And lists are one of the ways that the students can actually follow along. I say students, the bankers, they can follow along a lot easier to make sure that they know what their hashtag is doing and what others are doing, and create little lists. So if we go and we take a look at lists, defined as a subset of your Twitter accounts, and you can follow somebody and add them to a list. And if you're following somebody and they're following you, you've got the ability to direct message them back and forth. They get a notification that you followed them and vice versa. But if you want to add somebody to a list and you don't necessarily want them to know that you're following them, nor do you really care if you have the ability to direct message back and forth, you can actually add any Twitter account to a list. Now, if it's somebody that's got a private Twitter account, sometimes you'll run across somebody that'll have their tweets restricted and they provide approvals. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to run across people on Twitter that are going to have an open Twitter account. You can follow them, they can follow you. And so when you add accounts to your lists, this gives you the ability to basically go through, and out of the 2,900 accounts that I'm following, I can go through and I can jump down and I can say, you know what, here's an example. I've got a financial literacy list, or I've got, these are some of my Pacific Coast Banking School stuff. If I go down, let's find my banking list here real quick. So here's my banking industry list. So what I've done, because I do a lot of work in the banking space, in case you haven't figured it out yet, but what I've done is I've gone through, and anytime I meet somebody or interact with folks and they happen to touch the banking area, whether it's a bank, a credit union, an examiner, an employee at one of those institutions or organizations, what I'll do is I'll add them to this banking industry list. So you can see this has got 1,036 members. So it's, a third the size of my total following, but you can see I obviously follow a lot of people in the banking industry. The nice part about this is I can go in and I can very quickly see, without having the clutter of other stuff that I'm also following, like digital marketing and technology and cycling and maybe some golden retriever stuff, unless of course my banking friends are sharing that information, and in that case it's going to show up. But this gives me the ability to go in very quickly and I can jump right into my banking industry. The other thing that's cool is you can see that I've got 54 individuals out on Twitter that have decided they want to follow this list because they feel I've done a good job of curating information. And rather than them having to go out and find all of these banking resources or all of these fintech resources or all of these whatever resources, they're just going to subscribe to my list. And so as I add more information, more followers, or I guess I follow more people and I add more people to this list, these 54 individuals gain the benefit of that because I'm essentially taking on the responsibility of curating that content for them. I want to pause and make sure that that makes sense, because this, in my opinion, is somewhat of an untapped resource that businesses could do. We go back to the community banking example. Let's say you're a community bank, and I happen to be in Wichita, Kansas right now. Let's say you're a community bank or the local chamber, whatever the case is in Wichita. You could create a list of Wichita area businesses. Doesn't mean that they're customers of yours, doesn't mean that they're clients, doesn't mean that they're members, but you could take the initiative to create that list and add businesses and organizations and other people that are influential in the Wichita area, and then promote that to people that live in and around Wichita to say, hey, if you're wondering what's going on in Wichita, check out my list, and get them to subscribe. And as you're curating content and adding information, they will see that coming up as a result of your efforts. So it gives you somewhat of a subtle way to keep yourself front and center, because they're going to, whether directly or indirectly, realize or appreciate the fact that you're putting together this info. So if I go into the banking industry, you can see here, you've got the URL actually shows up. So the way that the format is, if the list is public, and I'll talk about the difference between public and private lists here in just a little bit, but it's going to be twitter.com/whatever your handle is /lists. And then it's going to just name it for banking industry. So if you are watching this webinar live or you're catching the recording, you could actually go to twitter.com/EricCook/lists/banking industry and see this. And you can subscribe to it, so you could become number 57 if you wanted to, if this was an area that you really wanted to pay attention to. And then you would have access to all of this information. It would show up in your subscribe list areas. And so if banking or Wichita area businesses or triathlons or mountain biking are important to you, you can subscribe to those lists, and that's there. If those lists don't exist, take it upon yourself to create one, promote it, and start becoming a content producer. And aggregate that, curate it, post some stuff to it. It's going to give you the ability to reinforce your brand, and you may be able to build some relationships with folks that are appreciative of the fact that all of this information about whatever industry or topic you want is being provided by you. So I can quickly jump into this list and scroll down, and you can see there's banks, there's credit unions, Financial Brand, which is one of my favorite resources for info, Jim Maru, who's a very influential individual that does a lot of thought leadership and article writing. So I can quickly jump into this and get a relatively clean version of Twitter that's really focused on the topic that I'm particularly interested in. So this may be a rehash for some of you. It may be something that you've never even heard of before, but either way, I would strongly suggest you take a look at lists. Now let's go back and talk about private versus public. So that banking industry list is a public list. I've curated that. I've got that out there for the rest of the world to look at. But you'll notice as I walk through some of these, they've got little locks next to them. So if you visit twitter.com/EricCook/lists, you're not going to see some of these private lists, because they're for me only. I don't want people to know about them. I don't maybe want people knowing who my rock stars are, because maybe this is my secret weapon. They always share the really, really good stuff that I can retweet or engage with that makes me look really good. You scroll down here a little bit further, you'll see I've got a family list, partners and friends. I've got a customer list. So some of these are ones that I want internally, so that it makes it really easy for me. So if I want to jump in and see what my customers are tweeting without having to filter my customers through the 2,900 tweets or more that are going to be coming through, I can create these little private lists, and that gives me the ability to jump in real quick and just see what my clients are up to. Or maybe I create a list of competitors. You know, if you're a restaurant and you've got other restaurants in your market area and you want to see what they're up to, what specials they're offering, what promotions they're doing, are they having any events on the weekends, you can create a private list that says, local competitors, and you can put those other businesses in there, and that just gives you a way to kind of help pay attention to them. Facebook on their analytics gives you something kind of similar, but not nearly as limitless, because you can put I don't know as if there's a limit, but I think I've got over 1,000 people in my banking industry list. In Facebook, you can go in and you can follow other pages, but I think that's limited to no more than 10. They don't get notification that you're following them, so it gives you the ability to kind of pay attention and compare your Facebook page to other Facebook pages, but you tap out at a certain number, whereas here you can jump in and really create a pretty robust stream of information as it relates to a particular topic or whatever you want. So to basically find someone or to add somebody to a list, if we just go here and let's just use the Wichita. So let's see if I can spell it correctly while I'm doing a live webinar. So I'm going to type in Wichita, Kansas. So let's say Wichita weather is something that I'm interested in, wondering what's going on, what's the weather going to be like. I could either follow them directly and that puts them into my stream, but what I could also do is if I click on them, I could go here, I could click on their profile, I could click on add remove from lists, I could click on that, it would bring up my lists. I could create a new list for Wichita area businesses or Wichita Twitter. I could make that public or private. But going through and adding somebody to a list is really pretty easy. So it's not a difficult thing to do. It's easy to manage on mobile just as it is on desktop. And when you get those lists created, it's going to help you drink from that Twitter fire hose a whole lot easier rather than feeling like you've got to consume everything all in one big shot. So lists, use them, try them. Let me know what you think. If you are using them, post a comment. Would love to hear from you. The next item I want to chat about is TweetDeck. So I would say if we were in a room, show of hands, how many of you have heard of Hootsuite? And some of you might raise your hands, some of you might not. But Hootsuite is a cross-platform management tool for social media that gives you the ability to add like a Facebook page or a LinkedIn account or a Twitter account, and then you can have different columns of information that sort information down for you so it can quickly get a look at it. Within TweetDeck, it just strictly focuses on Twitter. So you're not getting the LinkedIn, the Facebook, the other sorts of social platform clutter. And when you go into TweetDeck, it'll prompt you to authorize against your Twitter account, make sure that you're in there. Then you can see you've got this little sidebar. So as you kind of scroll through here, you've got your composer. So I can actually compose a tweet right from here, just like you could from Twitter. You've got some other notifications, some mentions. It gives you some lists. So it kind of gives you an idea. You can see I've got some messages, which are private one-on-one conversations. And if I wanted to add a column here, I could do that. So let's say I want to add a column, and maybe I want to add that trending column. So remember on the left-hand side, it talked about Nike, and I think SEMrush had another one in there. I could create the trending column, and now I can roll down here, and this is going to give me all the trending items that, as I go back here and I take a look at kind of the notifications, let's go to more. Oh, now I'm going to have a hard time remembering where that was actually put. So, oh, never mind. Switch sides. Pay attention, Eric. The trends are over on the right-hand side. You're watching the webinar, you're probably screaming at your computer going, dude, it's on the right-hand side. It was on the left on the old one. Now it's on the right. So here you can see you got Nike. This is kind of interesting. Barbie's Dark Secrets. I only want to click on that to see what that's all about. Switch Pro, Barry. So now you've got the trending showing up here. If you decide, let me move my little guy out of the way. If you decide you don't want that showing anymore, you got little controls here. You can scroll through, you can move the column, you can drag it. So if I wanted to move that over a little bit further, you could, or I could go ahead and I could just click on remove. That's going to go ahead and take it away. And then you can scroll right, left, back and forth. You can expand this a little bit. So it gives you a little bit more detail. You've got multiple accounts, so you can go back and forth. So if you've got your personal Twitter and a business Twitter, some settings. So this is a pretty cool way of managing it. And remember the list that I had showed you before, now we can go in and we can actually pull up the specific list and all that information is there. But now I can also take a look at mentions I can also take a look at a specific account. So this 360 view, this is a company in the financial services space that serves banks and credit unions, and I actually did a presentation for them last year. So I'd created a view for this so I could just kind of follow what they were talking about. Looks like the folks at Golden Spiral are retweeting a lot of information as it relates to the folks over at 360 View. So you can scroll through and kind of see there's a little blurb from me from January of earlier this year. So this kind of gives you an idea. So TweetDeck could very well be a nice little addition to your Twitter conversation if you're finding yourself not really using Twitter as well as maybe what you could or should, or it's just really frustrating. This is a way where you can maybe take some of that organizational capabilities of these different columns and push that information out and give you the ability to kind of sort it down a little bit faster and narrow in on what it is that you really want to look for. So let's go back here to add a column, and we're just going to do a search. So let's say I want to beef up on mountain biking. So I can do mountain bike. So we'll just do a search for mountain biking. I can do a search for that, and now, and I can grab this guy and I can scoot him over. So I can say, yep, I want to move him over a little bit more. So this is now going to give me the ability, because mountain biking is something that I love to do. This is going to give me the ability to go through and actually take a look at some mountain bike stuff. So interesting pannier system for a trunk for your mountain bike, which is kind of an interesting thought. But bike reviews, epic rides, photos, Strava updates. This is going to give me the ability, and I'm just basically searching for a hashtag. Hashtags are continuing to be a very popular way of sorting and segmenting your content and doing searches for stuff. Use them on Facebook, LinkedIn. LinkedIn Pages just is rolling out the capability of actually allowing you to associate your business page on LinkedIn with up to 3 hashtags that you feel best represent what your business offers. So if people are interested in following a particular hashtag, your page can get injected into that feed of information as you post information there. Hashtags are also a great way to explore more information. So, let's say, maybe enduro is something that also kind of piques an interest, or maybe extreme sports. Anytime you see a hashtag, you can click on it, and that's going to give you the ability to actually look and see, well, okay, I was on mountain biking, but then I clicked on extreme sports. So now here's a bunch of posts and articles and content that are talking about extreme sports. And then I can dive into, cars. So you can quickly see how you can dive into that little rabbit hole and get lost without a whole lot of effort. But it gives you the ability to kind of dive down. So 2 sides of that coin. One is, as you're looking to explore and learn more information and research, you can follow that rabbit hole. Or if you're producing content and you want it to be found, you can mark up your tweets and make sure that if somebody clicks on a particular hashtag, yours will get included as part of somebody else's research and digging process. And so, so I'm not really interested in extreme sports, so I can go ahead and I can remove that. If I decide mountain biking, I no longer want that, or maybe I can change it, I can go ahead. I can sort that down. So if I brought my bike with me, for example, and I wanted to find out if anybody's talking about mountain biking in Wichita, Kansas, I could go in and I could set up my location and I could filter that down a little bit more. So when you think about local businesses trying to be influential to local customers, you've got location filtering and other sorts of capabilities here that'll also help refine your search. Because if you don't, you're going to get mountain biking from all over the world. I may only be interested in mountain biking in Michigan, where I live, or in Wichita because that's where I'm visiting. So you've got the capabilities of doing that as well. Um, and I'm looking over my list of things that I wanted to talk about, and I think that was the last one. So, um, if you've not played around with the new layout of Twitter, you can do that. Oh, one other thing. I mentioned filtering and the feed. So on the new version of Twitter, they've actually created this little star option up here. If you click on this, this is going to give you the ability to change your content preferences. It used to be that when you followed somebody on Twitter, it just dumped them into your stream and you got like a chronological flow of information, which some people argue was too much. It was difficult to see the right stuff. You missed things. But on the flip side, it was natural and there was no algorithm controlling what Twitter thinks you should be seeing. Facebook has basically had algorithmic posting order. Instagram moved to that. Twitter was one of the last social networking platforms that resisted that urge. They switched to an algorithmic feed, and I will tell you, initially I was concerned. I really like it. I think Twitter has done a really good job of understanding what it is that I like to see and that I interact and engage with. So I'm okay with Twitter controlling my Twitter stream and giving me things like you may have missed or recommended for you. But if you want to go old school and say, nope, I want the fire hose given to me chronologically and I want to sort through it and I want to have control, you can go through and just switch it right here to latest tweets. And that's just going to be whoever just tweeted is going to go at the top, and then whoever tweeted just before that's going to go next. And it's going to fill up that way, regardless of whether Twitter thinks that that information is relevant to you or not. So in the old Twitter, you used to have to go into your settings and content and flip it back and forth. The new Twitter is giving you the ability to toggle back and forth very, very quickly, very, very easily. So that's one of the other elements that has come out that had been a little bit more of a challenge on the old platform. So I knew there was one other thing that I was missing, and that was it. So I hope you've enjoyed this kind of brief overview / crash course, refresher course on some Twitter stuff. I'll be curious to know if you've tried the new version or if you're kind of the opinion of a lot of people where you don't even really use Twitter on a desktop, so it's really no big deal. As long as the Twitter app continues to work, that's really where you go. But certainly whether you do the desktop or you do the mobile, make sure that you're paying attention to lists. Think about your industry. Think about who you want to influence. Think about who you want to pay attention to. And are you really able to find all that important information, or would a list be able to help percolate some of that stuff up to your attention span a whole lot easier? Give TweetDeck a try, create some columns, do a little multitasking and look at multiple things. And then don't be afraid to explore those hashtags, create them, add them, click on them, explore them, and just have some fun. Twitter is really designed to be much more of a conversational platform anyway, real time, in the moment. Even though we've gone more than 140 characters now, they're still relatively short compared to other social media posting options. But I've had a lot of really good conversations with folks over Twitter, back and forth with animated GIFs and emojis and kind of having some fun. So, even though it can be a really useful tool for work, there certainly is some pleasure and some fun involved as well. So that, my friends, concludes this week's episode of Free Webinar Wednesdays. I do appreciate those of you that have joined live, and even though I can't see your smiling face, I'm hoping that it's smiling and you were able to get a couple of things as takeaways. I'm excited to be delivering my Amazon talk tomorrow for the community bankers here in Kansas. And again, if you're going to be at that event, be sure to come up and say hi. I'd love to meet you in person. With that, we'll wrap the show. I'll be back, all things considered, and barring any unforeseen interruptions in my schedule and travel, next week on Free Webinar Wednesdays. But until then, have an awesome week. And let me see, somebody just came through. Cool. I thought it was a question, but it was just Thanks. Great info as usual. My pleasure, Sean. We'll see you on Twitter, my friend. And we'll see the rest of you here at freewebinarwednesdays.com for next week's webinar. Make it a great week. We'll talk to you later. See you, everybody.